Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the by-election race, building in the riding of Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills.
I believe that the longer we wait for the Conservatives to figure out if they are in fact Conservatives, the more and more disappointed we'll be.
The talk now of separatism is very concerning to me, and so I thought that it was really important that somebody had a voice.
It is a by-election quickly turning into a mini referendum on Alberta separation. The Conservative stronghold has voted UCP in back-to-back elections, but the Republican Party of Alberta looking to steal some of the right this time around, and the NDP also looking to send a message to the Smith government. The UCP's candidate, Tara Sawyer, did not respond to multiple CTV News interview requests. Kathy, is this a pre-referendum on separation? Is it a referendum on governance of the UCP? What's your read on what's at stake here?
I think there will be some aspect of that question about separation certainly will be playing out, and whether it actually affects the outcome is the question. But it does give the Republican Party its first sort of getting its feet wet, which I think is significant. And I think the question of separatism will get an airing, whether there's as it now appears there won't be, a debate or not. So it's allowing them to get out there to test their support in a rural riding to get that sort of feel of the electorate on whether there are prospects for a referendum or ultimately for some electoral support.
Jim, this riding did elect a separatist MLA from the Western Canada Concept Party way back in the early 1980s. How worried do you feel the UCP should be about holding on to this seat in 2025?
I think you'd be hard pressed to find a better riding to run in for a separatist. The Republican Party, if they're going to make any inroads, it's going to be into a constituency of this nature. It really is. I wouldn't even be concerned with vote splitting. So where the NDP goes up the middle because of a vote split between the UCP and the Republican Party, I just don't even see that, because this is between these two. But I think one of them will garner enough votes that it'll be very clear if this is a true referendum on separation, or if it is just the UCP all the way, and we're going to continue to our loyalty in that regard.
Kathy, based on that past track record, how much of a window or door do you see opening here for the Republican Party of Alberta?
I think that they'll be in tough for a couple of reasons. First of all, they haven't had much time to organize, and so that's certainly against them in the sense that this is, from the perspective of Olds Didsbury, this was a very quickly called by-election triggered by Nathan Cooper's appointment to Washington. I might say there's a difference between now and 1982 now, not just in the matter of, Alberta's a different province now. There's a different demographic and electorate in Olds Didsbury, Three Hills, but also because back then in 1982, it had never actually been a conservative riding. It was a social credit riding. It was very, very far to the right. We were in the waning days of the Lougheed government, and there was a feeling at that time, I think, in rural areas that the Conservatives were not taking full notice of rural roots. You can't say that of the UCP. I think the UCP's been very, very careful to shore up its rural base. And so I think it will be very, very tough for the Republican Party to make inroads here, simply because they can't say they've been ignored by the Premier.
Jim, any chance the Republican Party can make any kind of inroads in the two Edmonton area by-elections that will also be decided June 23rd?
I wouldn't see that as very likely. I think it may be determined a little bit by the Carney-Smith relationship. If that continues to sort of evolve, it may diffuse any effort to get a real serious independence movement going. And I wouldn't see in Edmonton in any way, shape, or form being the heart of any real serious independence movement.
Okay, well, let's shift gears to municipal politics. We heard from Tim Cartmell off the top. He's the mayoral candidate behind the new Better Edmonton political party that launched this week with a full slate of candidates. Jim, what do you make of the degree of organization Better Edmonton brings to this Edmonton election race and the way this new party defines itself?
Yeah, I think Tim has some good ideas there and a good concept as a team orientation. The problem is they're trying to fit a parliamentary structure with party systems into a municipal election that doesn't really meld well with parliamentary democracy. There are no majority parties and minority parties. So if Tim gets elected as the mayor, he may end up with a council that's completely opposed to him because they represent one of the other parties or independent people on. So you can have these great concepts, but it doesn't really fit the mold. It's like a square peg in a round hole.
I guess that could go the other way as well. All 13 candidates could maybe get elected, Kathy.
Well, I mean, it's theoretically possible, but I might say that generally speaking, Alberta has been against municipal parties, and they haven't really fared well when there have been block attempts in terms of candidates. I think people might see that as anti-democratic if you had an entire essentially party running the council with no dissenting voice there.
Okay. So, Kathy, with other key mayoral candidates running as independents, how much of a benefit is it then for Tim Cartmell to come at this election with a party behind him? How's that change the dynamics?
It does give sort of a cheat sheet for voters who do want to vote in a certain manner. I think that it will be very similar to PACE in terms of its political bent. PACE is the other party that's been out there and particularly active. So basically we have two center to right parties and Andrew Nana, who's progressive. So I think there will be some clear opportunities for voters to decide where they want to go here. But I think there could well be quite a mix, as there is now on the council. There's a bit of a mix now. So I don't see a huge change in that.
Okay, so and Jim, if we pick up on that line of thought, whether it's Better Edmonton or PACE, any of the others that maybe enter elections in the two big cities, how challenged do you feel some of these parties will be to establish identities, harness support?
Oh, it's very difficult because they you know, as mentioned by your guest, there was no attempt to put an ideological bent to it. So they can't relay themselves to the UCP or the NDP. So they're sort of floating around saying, well, we're centralists or we're a little bit right of center. But what does that really mean when we talk municipal politics? It's, you know, we want to know who's going to patch our roads and clear our garbages and, you know, make sure our water is treated and all these sort of aspects. And to have an ideological approach to any of those things is wrong. And of course, when you get the conflict between a certain amount of loyalty to being elected as a Better Alberta or Better Edmonton approach, as an example, as opposed to your own constituents don't want you to do something that follows that party line, you run into a lot of conflict there.
A Canadian who has inspired many with his soaring achievements has died. Marc Garneau made history as the first Canadian to fly in space in 1984 and would go on to take part in multiple shuttle missions before serving as president of the Canadian Space Agency. And Garneau would later reinvent himself as a politician, elected as a Liberal MP in 2008, going on to serve in a couple cabinet portfolios, including Foreign Affairs and Minister of Transportation. Retired 2 years ago, Marc Garneau was 76. Kathy, I'll start with you this time. His family says he died after a short illness. As a notable Canadian, where do you feel he made the most impact?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think he made a huge impact in terms of science in Canada. I think it's it's really interesting when you have someone with that deep a scientific background as an astronaut who then goes on to become a leader in the national government. It speaks to an importance of science in the lifeblood of this country. So I would say that both aspects of his life have been important, but coming from that science background is where he's made that huge impact.
Jim, what do you feel Marc Garneau brought to the federal political domain?
Well, as a politician, I think he really believed in consensus over conflict. And, you know, he wasn't the strong vitriol type in the House during question period where his animosity showed. It was more congenial and an attempt to be a conciliatory type of approach as opposed to some confrontation. And I think that was an important thing, and it would be great to have more politicians that are like that. But unfortunately, it seems like we all want to have somebody that's going to stand up and yell at each other and declare themselves more vehemently than what he usually would do.
Yeah, and from across the political spectrum, politicians reflecting on his passing all have great things to say, including one of our former premiers, Jason Kenney, from his time back as an MP as well. All right, one more topic, and it comes on the heels of the Oilers winning Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Premier Smith says she has invited the Prime Minister to join her for Game 5, which, assuming the series goes 5 or more games, would take place on the weekend ahead of the G7 summit in Kananaskis. Jim, Marc Carney's allegiance to the Oilers has already been well established, given his roots in the province. But how much of a sign of Alberta-Ottawa unity would it be were these two leaders to be seen at the playoff game together?
It would be probably unprecedented. Like, can you imagine her inviting Trudeau to the same thing? Unfortunately, with the healthcare scandal right currently going on, most people are going to look at this and see him in a private box again and think, well, I wonder who's paying for this one, because the last one, when Danielle Smith and many of her cabinet ministers was being paid for by a person who was a lobbyist and had millions of dollars in contract with healthcare. I don't know what she was thinking when she would open that bailiwick again and say, hey, Prime Minister, come and join me. We'll pay for your tickets. This would sound a little bit, poor judgment.
Okay, so let's pick up on that, Kathy. Surprised the Premier would extend the invite, given the degree of criticism hurled at Danielle Smith, some of her cabinet ministers, over attendance at playoff games last year.
Yeah, I know. You think that really the Oilers and playoffs is sort of a kryptonite, you'd think, for Danielle Smith. But this isn't a bad diversionary tactic. I mean, you say, in the interest of national unity, I'm asking the Prime Minister to join me. It's sort of a look over here, don't look over there kind of a tactic, I think. And so it's quite clever. And I think it follows on some criticism that the Premier has endured over the years about her animosity towards Ottawa. Here would be one of those kumbaya moments, following hard on the heels of that recent First Ministers meeting, in which there seemed to be some rapprochement. So I think it's a nice way for her to try and divert attention from that the image of her once again in presumably a box at a Stanley Cup playoff.
Well, and Kathy, with that kumbaya element at play, what do you think then, if they were to actually go to a game together, what do you think it would accomplish?
I think, well, it's going to be a great photo op for both of them. I mean, it's basically something that a lot of people in Canada are looking for is to see the two of them laughing and joking together. I think it would be, just one of those sort of images that could resonate with a lot of Canadians who are a little worried about unity in the country. And so it's purely superficial, but sometimes those little superficial images actually do have an effect on how we're feeling about our political leaders.
Jim, given all that is on the Prime Minister's plate at the moment, including hosting a G7 summit in a matter of days. How do you think it would go over generally if he were to attend Game 5?
I think it would be great for his track record. I think it would look good on him. I'm not sure if Danielle Smith would want to go that far when you consider that she gets a lot of mileage out of beating Ottawa and saying, you know, look at what they're doing to us. So it would kind of be contradictory that way. But I think the Prime Minister would be very happy to do it. Kind of the idea that he's overcome some of the conflict that's gone on with Alberta. I think he'd be right up his alley.
How about this for a thought? Maybe Donald Trump could come and join the game as well. I'm assuming he would cheer for the Florida Panthers, but wouldn't that make for a photo op?
Oh yeah, yeah. Could make for a fist fight. You never know.
True enough. Someone would have to be in the middle. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Kathy.